Before we start troubleshooting a router on a trunk, and some literature, by the way, calls that a router on a stick topology. Nowadays, Cisco is calling that a router on a trunk topology. But before we get into the troubleshooting aspect, let's see how it's supposed to be set up. We see a sample configuration on screen, but I thought we would go out to live interface and check out a basic router on a trunk topology. First, I'll go over to my switch, and let's take a look at interface gigabit 1/0/24. That's the interface I have configured as a trunk. Let's say show run pipe to begin 1/0/24. And this is a working configuration. Let's see what's going on here. Well, for one thing, notice that I'm saying switch port mode trunk. I'm not relying on dynamic trunking protocol. I'm not relying on DTP to form the trunk. I'm saying you are a trunk. And it's necessary that we do this because the router does not run DTP. It's not going to dynamically form a trunk. We need to hard code the trunk. Also, notice I'm specifying my native VLAN. I'm saying the native VLAN is VLAN 300. That needs to match on the router's configuration. Also, notice that I'm hard coding the encapsulation type. We could run ISL as our encapsulation type on this port. We could run .1Q. We want to be running .1Q for this router on a trunk configuration typically, but let's make sure that it matches on the router side as well. And let's go over to the router. Speaking of that, let's go over to the router, and I'm going to do a show run pipe to begin Fast Ethernet. It's my first Fast Ethernet interface. Notice the interface, Fast Ethernet 0/0 itself, under the physical interface configuration, there's no IP address. However, I've got this carved up into multiple sub-interfaces. Fast Ethernet 0/0.100, .200, .300. I've given a description about these different VLANs corresponding to the different sub-interfaces. Here for Fast Ethernet 0/0.100, notice I'm saying encapsulation .1Q. My encapsulation type is matching 100. I'm saying that this interface corresponds to VLAN 100 coming over that trunk. And I've got an IP address that corresponds to that VLAN, that corresponds to that subnet. Here's another sub-interface, Fast Ethernet 0/0.200. Again, .1Q is the encapsulation type, 200 is the VLAN ID, and remember that one VLAN on a .1Q trunk is a native VLAN. It does not get those 4 extra bytes added onto the frame. It does not have any tag bytes added. That's the native VLAN, and here I'm indicating that Fast Ethernet 0/0.300, it is using the .1Q encapsulation, and it's VLAN 300, and it's the native VLAN. Well, that's a look at how we can go in and configure a router and a switch for a router on a trunk configuration.